Hi there, and welcome to Be a Global Citizen, the podcast that explores the concept of global citizenship through the lens of value-creating education. My name is Scott Bauer, and I'm a SOCA researcher and educator. I hope you find the discussions, stories, and insights on this podcast to be valuable and inspiring as we strive to become global citizens who are committed to living a contributive life. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name is Felipe Iwahashi. I am a Buddhist, I am a multilingual, I am an educator, I am a learner. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Felipe. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm really excited to have you. And we have been friends for many years now, going back to our time in Brazil, or my time in Brazil, right, which is where you're originally from, Felipe. And it's just so wonderful to see the different twists and turns of both of our journeys. And that, and we were talking about this just a little while ago, how interesting it was for me back in 2016 when I arrived in Sao Paulo to be the foreigner, right? The one in Brazil and trying to figure out my life. And then, several years later, there's this interesting reversal where both you and your partner came to California, and then you got to experience what it was like adapting, although on another level, right? Because now, you're very much settled and more permanent and gone through the whole immigration process. And I think all of that is to say, it's because you have a very important mission in California. And I know that the work that you and your partner are doing as educators has worldwide implications. And I think that stems not only from your past experiences, but also just in terms of the different cultures that you bring together. Because you're much more than just Brazilian, right? And you're, that multilingual component that you talked about is very true. I've never met a more fluent person in multiple languages than you. So I'm curious to learn about your journey, what brought you to California, but also what sparks this sense of joy and curiosity about educating others, and just what is ahead for you. So if you can share some of the milestones of your journey as an educator, I'd really be interested to learn more about your background.
Yeah, no, thank you, Scott, for this amazing introduction. And as you mentioned, our path were able to cross almost 10 or 11 years ago back in Brazil when I was pursuing my dreams back in that time. And so it's so interesting and funny to see like how our life really were able to get like those directions, right? Where I never thought about in being in the US currently, but here I am working after being able to graduate from my master's here. So it has been an interesting journey, and I've been trying to enjoy all of the milestones that hopefully I will be able to share a little bit here. And so I'm very grateful for everything. Yeah, so just a little bit about me. Basically, I would say I usually have this script in mind where I would like always say, my name is Felipe Kenichi Iwahashi da Silva. It's a pretty long name where I have the Brazilian heritage plus the Japanese heritage really strong in my family. So my dad, it's Brazilian who were born and raised in Brazil. By my mom's side is my mom's family. They immigrated back from Japan to Brazil, and she was born in Brazil and raised in Brazil, but has a physical future as a Japanese. And then throughout my life, education has been this big important component. And I would say I realized that most recently, I would say like 4 or 5 years ago, because basically ever since when I was a little kid, I remember my dad and my mom always encouraged me, you have to go to university no matter what happened. You can't choose anything, but you got to finish a college, your higher education. So ever since when I was a kid, that was something that I started cultivating. And that comes from the perspective where unfortunately, they were not able to finish their higher education, and they always encouraged myself and my siblings to pursue that. And when I was very young, and 2 years old, that was during the 90s. So a lot of Japanese immigrants that were able to go back to Japan and start working because it was the Japanese boom during that time. So my parents decided to do that when I was 2 years and a half. And they were planning to stay only for 2 or 3 years, but we ended up staying there for almost 15 years. I'm sorry, uh, 13 years until when I was 15. So that basically, although I was born in Brazil, I was raised in the Japanese context, in a city full of Brazilian. That was another interesting thing. But not only Brazilian, but a lot of international people, especially from Peru, from Bangladesh, from different Southeast Asian countries. And yeah, then when I was 15 years old, my parents decided to move back to Brazil, specifically because they wanted us to pursue a higher education, right? So I'm the oldest siblings, between three. So staying in Japan as an immigrant, most of the time is synonymous of working in the factory or in the industry, right? It's really challenging to get out from that path, especially if you do not go to Japanese school. And in my case, since my parents really wanted to go back someday, I was introduced to Japanese school, but because we had a lot of Brazilian in my city, they were even able to establish some Brazilian school. And that's where I did my studies in Japan, but in a Brazilian school from my 8 years old until 15, first year of high school. That's when we moved back, and my journey in Brazil really started pursuing high school. And then after a couple of years, that was a really challenging time when we moved to Brazil, because basically my parents had to reconstruct their own life, right? Move back to Brazil in their early 50s, late 40s. Now, in terms of career, the income really become a struggle for us. So that's when I really had to took the life, right? Okay, how I'm gonna do it. How can I support my family, but also how can I keep going into the journey of studying? So through this encouragement from my mom and my dad in terms of studies, I was able to pursue many other things.
There's so much about your story, even just from your childhood, how you were raised in different cultures, right? Different countries. And I'm sure that it was probably very exciting to be in these different like areas where, yeah, you had students, young people from different backgrounds, but at the same time, Japan is a very homogenous society, and one where you probably felt that kind of foreigner, expat kind of status just even more accentuated, right? It was just that much more obvious. Um, and I know that, in those formative years, we really look to those closest to us for some sense of grounding. And, given the fact that you moved to Japan when you were 2 years old, you probably felt yourself to be maybe more, I don't know, Japanese, or like, was there a certain like identity that kind of drew you, that anchored you a little bit more? And then what happened as you were getting older, where it started to kind of gain new complexity as far as how you navigate, the transition back to Brazil? So, yeah, from your own, personal experience, like how did that experience go for you? Was it smooth?
Yeah, right. No, that part of identify myself, it was really challenging, right? I think as a society, as we know, we always try to put ourselves in a box or label ourselves for something. And through that, trying to create a sense of belonging, right? And what happened when I was in Japan, it was like although I was able to learn Japanese, speak Japanese fluently within the Japanese friendship, even though speaking like the language, understanding the context, I was always treated as a foreigner, right? As a Brazilian or someone who is outsider. Now, in Japanese, there's a term that they use is a gaijin. But yeah, and then funny enough, when I moved back to Brazil, which is supposed to be my home, right, my roots, I was also treated as a foreigner somehow. Oh no, you came from Japan. You're Japanese. You have a Japanese mom, so you're Japanese. So until my early 20s, I had this really challenging time of the identity crisis. And what is interesting that the first that's like a really personal thing, that the first tattoo that I did, it's basically to reaffirm myself what identity that I wanted to pursue during that time, right? And I ended up doing a South America map with a compass and a couple of things that identify myself. This is who I am. I'm Brazilian, and there's no one who will tell me that I'm not. Um, but throughout the time, right, now that I'm early 30s, now I've been learning that, you know, identity it's not something that people should tell you who are you, right? You need to really try to figure out. And in my case, I was able to understand my complexity as a background, and it's okay, like being able to embrace all the challenges when it comes to where I'm from or who am I. It's totally okay, especially when I came to US, where I was able to hear a lot of people identify themselves. Oh, I am Asian American, I am Black American, or I am Hispanic American. Being able to probably try to encapsulate a little bit of both or three different contexts, right? And now I would say I'm able to identify myself as a Japanese Brazilian with this sense of proud, which I didn't have when I did the tattoo, right? But yeah, that brought a lot of challenges during that time. But now I'm able to figure out, wow, this is who I am. I am everything. I am all the complexity.
I didn't know that you had a tattoo like that. That's very cool. and I think it's very fitting in the sense that when we're undergoing this kind of identity crisis, let's call it, right? Where we're in an environment where perhaps there's this sense of, like you said, the people around us wanting to put us into a box, and then us maybe pushing back and then having to reassert, no, this is who I am. And maybe it comes from a place of trying to tell the environment, this is, me putting it out there, or in the form of a tattoo where you're really trying to like anchor yourself and in the understanding of, no, this is what I want to start off from this basis and to move forward. But it's clear from your journey from Japan, Brazil to the US that there's so much more fluidity in how you've been able to really not just grow, but evolve your sense of identity. And now to come to this realization that, you not only have the ability to find the right kind of terminology, and the voice that comes with that to express what that means, but also this perhaps openness that it can change still.
Exactly.
And I just think that it's just really beautiful. I don't know if you kind of think about it in this way, but it just seems like there are these like kind of clear phases of your life from the early childhood up until your teenage years of really trying to make sense of your identity in Japan, right? And experiencing those pressures. But then in Brazil, then having to reassert your identity as a Brazilian.
Yeah.
And then now you're in the US where it's like,
Yeah.
land of immigrants, and still you have to assert, like, and present yourself. But now
True.
there seems to be maybe a wider spectrum, right, of
Mm.
the kind of terminologies and the understandings of, wow, people are coming from very unique and complicated backgrounds as well.
True.
And that maybe there's more willingness to understand or get to understand what exactly your background is. And I
Mm.
think that's really beautiful. And I know, but again, like, that's kind of like, in hindsight, we can point out these phases and it
True.
sounds great and sounds like it was a piece of cake. But again, I think that grappling of, like, who am I is just so
Mm.
important. And I think, throughout that period, right, maybe a through line, not just in terms of, the ethnic or
Mm-hmm.
national identities that you were expressing, but, also your identity as, like, a student. It
Yeah.
sounds like from your parents, right, this emphasis on you going to college, um, completing college and using that education to have a even better life. I'm curious about what were some of the twists and turns as you were pursuing not just high school in Brazil, but also your undergraduate experience. And then you also mentioned that you did your master's in the US. And so it sounds like that might have also had some major pivot points for you in terms of your journey as a
Mm.
student, as a learner. So maybe could you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I would say through this encouragement, right, from my parents, where it doesn't matter, you need to go to it doesn't matter in the sense of what kind of course that you want, major that you want to pursue. They really encouraged me to do something for higher education. And ever since when I was in Japan, something that always caught my attention, it was like this an amazing world that we live and the amazing diversity that we had during in the city where I was living, and how that influenced me to take on in terms of what kind of studies that I would make. So in Brazil, now when I moved when I was 15, as I mentioned, it was really challenging, especially financially. So ever since I finished my high school, I really needed to support my parents working. As I started working full time when I was 15. So from 17 years old, I always had to work full time and juggle studies in the middle. So during that time, it took me almost 3 years to getting into a university. So in Brazil, we have this system where most of the big and good university is a public, meaning that if you got accepted into a public university, and the only way to get accepted is through an exam base. On one day, if you go well on that exam, you got accepted. If not, you gotta wait, gotta study, right? Prepare yourself for next year. So it took me 3 years to get into that university. Um, and then during and after that, I still needed to work full time. So I was there for almost 10 years, full time student and full time work person. Yeah. And through that, of course, I was able to learn so many things in the middle in terms of life, but also I had a lot of challenges in terms of my studies. But then what I was able to pursue, it was a passion about international relations. Now, that's what I ended up doing in Brazil. So I study at the Federal University of ABC, which is in the city of São Bernardo. And that period, man, it was a period where I learned to not give up. Up, so many things, right? In terms of studies, dreams, especially because my routine was really challenging, right? I need to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, go to work at 8, and then leave, go to the university, which took me like almost 2 hours to commute until the university every day. Then class start at 7 to 11:30 p.m. And then 1 hour and 30 or 2 hours to come back. So it was like arriving at 1 a.m. to wake up at 5:30, and then do that again and again. So it was this challenge in trying to survive, to be honest, during that time. But I'm very appreciative now that I went through that. I had this dream of living abroad, study abroad. I want to go out. I want to travel the world. And I still remember, like, when I met you, it was one of the first American that I was able to engage. Hey, let me try to practice a little bit of my English, right? And then it was the time when I was start learning English, doing some classes with this in mind of one day I want to go study or travel. So that was able to happen during the pandemic. So after 6 years of amazing journey in the university for my bachelor, and I was able to graduate with my double major in humanities and international relations. And then after that, I decided, okay, now it's time to do my master's. And I decided to go to Soka University in Japan, in Tokyo. But it was during the pandemic. Luckily, I was able to be accepted. And then 1 year, unfortunately, I had to do through Zoom, online courses. But the next year, the second year of my master, I was able to go to Japan and pursue the amazing master's degree that I really enjoyed, being in that amazing university, which, how should I put it, where I was able to really engage in the global citizenship aspect, so many diverse student body that we had, and so many life lessons that I was able to have during that course of 2 years. And 3 years ago, after graduating from Soka University in Japan, I decided to immigrate to US to stay here with my wife, met during that time my girlfriend and fiance. But in order to come to US, the best way that we thought during that time, it was maybe coming as a student. So that's when we decided, okay, let me try to apply for one more master's. So I applied and then was able to be accepted. And after 2 years, that time I pursued my master's in educational leadership at Soka University of America, and had this amazing 2 years of experiencing Soka education here in the US context. And finally, last year during May 2025, I was able to graduate, and now I start working in the educational environment.
Wow, thank you so much, Felipe. It's so encouraging and inspiring to hear your journey and how it relates to the struggle that you had to go through, because finishing your undergrad in Brazil, it's so noble that you really committed to that path, and that you had this like urge, right? This desire to see what is beyond just this immediate environment in Brazil. I would imagine with so much of your studies in international relations and learning about other international systems or ways in which they approach their policies or how they, conduct different diplomatic ventures, all of those things relating to, international relations, it got you, maybe it activated a certain side of your past, life in Japan, and then also some of the people that you were then meeting on the street, like me, right, from the US, and being like, wow, like here I am in Brazil, able to communicate with people in Japanese and Portuguese, and now in English. I mean, what better way than to actually, start exploring in this proactive sense of you going out rather than them coming to you, and build your own sense of what is the world around me rather than just what is the world vis-a-vis a textbook. And I think it's really wonderful. Like you had this exposure um, to study at not just one Soka university, right, but both Soka universities.
Sure.
So I'm curious. Could you maybe share a little bit more about, well, from those two experiences, what did you kind of end up walking away with in terms of like what a Soka education meant for you? And then you also brought up global citizenship when you were in Soka University. Like, how does that connect with global citizenship as well? I'm curious. So it's kind of big questions, I know, but maybe like from whatever angle you can find, like how can you kind of share out those main takeaways from your time at Soka University?
Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, first, right, I really need to recognize my privilege, of course, in being able to live in the context of Japan and then being able to learn as much as I could during that time. And then when I moved back to Brazil, I was able to live this different context, which it was this life learn experience and not giving up in terms of my dreams. And I was able to have this amazing friends and community where I push myself, like, even though it might be hard right now, that you're adjusting as a whole family here, do not give up in your dreams. And my dreams during that time was like basic thing, trying to pursue a higher education, trying to travel around the world, trying to make friends throughout the world. So whenever I was able to meet people like you or people around the world, I felt like, I want to do this for my life, like trying to meet many people as possible, and really felt the importance of being able to master like the language as much as possible. So English was really this big monster for me, which I was like, wow, how can I learn this? But throughout the time, I'm very proud of myself and being able to do that. And right now, being able to express myself in a language that it's not that I do not grow up with. I feel that Soka education really translates into being happy as a student, as a learner, no matter the context where you are, being able to really feel happy in learning. And I think that was my experience. So those 6 years that I had in Brazil, it was really challenging. I couldn't enjoy learning, right? I was surviving like the test, surviving in the writing, and that of course reflect now in terms of grades or GPA and everything that we do, right? And my self-esteem was really low because I couldn't achieve something that would be like very meaningful. And yeah, but then when I got accepted for Japan, was able to study even through Zoom, I felt like this sense of happiness in being able to learn different things. And not learning because you have an exam or because you have an essay to write, but learn to put in your life, right? So classes that I had, right, it was this life learn experience as a student. So I really felt the treasure in being a learner and trying to explore something that I wanted, and being able to, how should I put it? Like become a student where you can just worry to learn. né? So that's in both contexts, in Japan and also here in the US, but in a different scenario, right? In SUJ, which is at Soka University in Japan, basically my cohort was really big compared to the US, where we were in like 14 different friends and different nationalities. And compared to that, here in the US, I was only with 6. So one thing that I learned through Soka education here in the US context is because we are this smaller cohort, the sense of family that we had for each other, it was something that I never felt somewhere else in Brazil or in Japan. So we had to work together, struggle together, and win together. So that was very unique. And yeah, I was able to experience that because of this Soka context. Yeah, and then in terms of global citizenship, man, in the beginning, when I think the context of doing a master's, right? It's come from, okay, are you interested in that specific topic? So just go and try to learn more about it. And for that context of global citizenship, what I was able to learn and something that I really tried to put in practice is how can I try to translate all of those big challenges that we have in the world in context of the student. So most of the teachers and the professors that I was able to have, they always try to bring that perspective of, okay, we have the global warming in terms of environment. We have war happening in the world. We have this so challenging political scenario in different contexts in the world. But how can that be translated into your context, Felipe? How do you see that? How do you feel? Or how is in Brazil? Now, it was those first time where I was able to feel confident enough to talk in the classroom, in Japan and in the US, because different from the undergraduate experience where we had 80, 50 people in a classroom, raising my hand, it was something that I couldn't do it inside of that big class. But in those small groups, I felt the safe environment where I could express my perspective and my opinion. And because of that, I was able to feel, okay, I have something to contribute here. I'm not an invisible person, right? There is something in my story that I can share and how valuable that is. So those were something that I was able to experience as a student and learn as a student. And now as an educator, as a practitioner, I try to translate that into my classes or as a profession. Yeah.
Beautifully said. No, thank you so much, Felipe. There's so much that I just wanted to touch upon because I feel you shared a lot just there. And so when you were talking about your experiences at Soka schools, I think it's really wonderful that you have this basis of comparison between your studies at Federal University in Brazil and then these experiences abroad in Japan, in the US, at Soka institutions where it was this big shift. But I feel like in a way, you know, when you were talking about like just the joys of being a student and being happy while learning, that seemed like that was a really important aspect of it. It's almost as if because you had struggled and gone through like the difficulties of like, you know, working full time while being a student full time, that it really accentuated just how special the Soka, you know, education experience was, to the point where I mean it would have been maybe a different takeaway if you had just immediately been in the Soka environment, right? I think again, like in life, we kind of need to experience both sides to then kind of land at where we stand in terms of where the value is. But I mean, either way, I think what you said about like understanding like the treasure of being a learner, I think that's how you phrased it, just really resonated with me because I find that in the world that we live in, more and more, we find the sense that education is just a means to an end of getting a job, and that getting that job is really just to support yourself and your family, and you're just kind of locked into that for a career. Where you're approaching this from the Soka perspective of like, well, I mean, the job is important and the job will come, but at the same time, like, what an incredible moment it is to step into the shoes of a learner, of a student, and then beyond that, kind of a broader context,
That's true.
a learner, right?
Yeah.
So I think that those are some really important takeaways that you're articulating from your time at Soka University. But I also would say that as a result of going through what you did in Brazil, I think you're able to make those points just land even more powerfully. I find that it came from this, courage to not only find your voice, but to really use your voice to make contributions to others. And I find that really is a very revolutionary idea in the times that we're living in, because I think so much of what we see, especially now in kind of social media, digital realms, there's this maybe I don't know if it's a tendency, but so much of social media invites comparison. And by comparison, we then think, well, so many other people are saying it, right? Their voices matter more than mine. And then we kind of land in this more passive state, when to enact change and to contribute in meaningful ways to pursuits that are important to us or to our dreams, it can't come from a passive stance. It has to be proactive and it has to be dynamic. And so, well, one, do you agree with that? And how is it that, like, from, now your understanding of using your voice as an educator, also in a more academic tone as well, like through writings? I know you've attended some conferences recently, but how are you more explicitly bringing forth that sense of global citizenship into your work in the classroom as well as into academic circles?
Yes. I still remember like one of the first classes for my master's. I was so worried in terms of first, am I gonna be able to really translate my perspective on a specific point? And then if worry in how I'm gonna be judged based on that opinion. Because as you mentioned, right, the experience that I was having throughout my life, it was like this either in high school or even in the bachelor degree, where sometimes your voice, it doesn't matter. And the most important thing is what the teacher are trying to teach you, right? And even if you have a simple question, back in my mind, I was like, maybe that's irrelevant, or maybe it's something wrong with me that I didn't get it. Always trying to doubt about myself. But then the professors in the master's environment really create a space where there's no right or wrong perspective. We just want to try to hear your opinion about specific topic, and we're going to discuss. Of course, sometimes we had this heated moment, right, where I do not agree, I disagree. But that also was an experience where I personally was able to learn a lot. Now, about the content, of course, but also as a person. Oh, wow, that's so interesting. I never heard about this perspective. Oh, wow, I do understand you, but I think this way, X, Y, and Z. So definitely, I totally agree. Being able to practice your voice no matter where you are, especially in a classroom, it's something very powerful. And now that I'm reflecting, right, I think that's what I really try to do currently as a practitioner. So ever since August of last year, I was able to start working in a charter school here in Costa Mesa in the California. And it's really an interesting school where it's an international school where we teach 3 different languages for all the students. English, of course, Spanish every day, but the student need to choose either Japanese or Chinese, right? And not only that, my responsibility is to teach one subject called project-based learning, PBL. And basically in the school, throughout the year, we have 6 different big projects. So from goal setting to multiculturalism to peace and human rights, environment. And then the classroom that I'm taking care of right now, it's specifically for that class, it's 6th to 8th graders students, so middle school. And to be honest, in the beginning, it was really challenging for me because I didn't know how to do it, right? I didn't know how to manage the class or to do a work as a teacher. But then throughout the time, I was able to really understand that the most important thing as a teacher is how can you create trust with your student. And that trust come with dialogue, one-on-one conversation, being able to see that student as a person and as someone that can also teach you so many things. Once I was able to really understand that not only as my duty as a teacher that I needed to, show the content or only class management or etc. More of a really valuing the person, student that is 11 years old or 14 years old as the same as adults. That's when the shift start happening. And practical things that I really try to do, right, in terms of classroom, it's trying to hear all the students in a classroom, even if it is one small thing. Please, I always encourage, there is no right or wrong. Your voice is really important. So share with us in a classroom, right? So that's what I really try to do, or pairing up with in a group. So do a partner sharing, and then as a whole class share what we were able to discuss. And those were simple things that professors were doing in my class. And I felt so comfortable in sharing my perspective. And that really gave me confidence that my voice is really meaningful to be heard. Therefore, I am a person to be valued too. That's how I try to translate into my work context currently.
That's so wonderful. And it sounds like you are able to pay forward like what you were able to receive at both programs at Soka University. And it's something that I think in theory we think, oh yeah, I can do that. I can make, everyone's voice be heard and matter. But in actual practice, we start recognizing how the classroom is this, oh man, there's so many different emotions and so many different feelings that come into play. And there's also, I think, the inevitable doubt as a teacher of like, what does this even mean? I've had, we've all had many teachers in our lives, but how many of those teachers really left a lasting impression? And
Sure.
and then are we up to the task of stepping into that important role where we can see the importance of that like influence, and yet we kind of see there's this gap between maybe where we're at when we're starting off and where we would like to be. But when you really focused on the important aspect of just building trust with your students, I think that's just so beautifully put, because I 100% agree with you. I think where teachers maybe find themselves in a difficult spot is when they think they're the authority and that they know everything and that this is how it has to happen, and you're just dragging students in a direction without really communicating with them why this direction, and then also really understanding them, like how can we better connect so that we can all move together. And that togetherness, you put it beautifully with the SUA master's program about this sense of family, right? That you work together you struggle together, and you win together. Like, why don't we apply that as teachers to each of our classes, right? Where we have, you don't have to necessarily call them a family, right? I understand how people can have different understandings of what family means, but just work together, right? Or study together, maybe is another substitute. There will be struggle in terms of the debates of, like, different people voicing their opinions or grappling with difficult content. But the last one about winning together, I think that's, paying that close attention to maybe, the win comes from a student who has been very, very shy, who never wants to speak. And yet one day they raise their hand and they ask a question. And then as the teacher, to have that sensitivity to realize that was the win, and to really, like, properly praise the student, where they feel, wow, this is the safe environment. And this is the beginning of a much longer journey of them not only speaking more and discovering their voice, but also, I would say, in becoming global citizen, right? Because again, this ties back to what you were talking about. I feel like it's the courage to use one's voice and then apply that towards their own mission. And so I just think that it's just so fantastic that you find yourself being able to draw from all of these past experiences, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, right? Of, you yourself being in that situation of, I don't think I can ask a question, to now saying, wow, here's the class that I'm responsible for, but, like, let's win together.
No, totally. Wow. And then I think this conversation is really making me reflect that the journey that I had, and now how that influence. I feel that sometimes when we are just working, it's so difficult to reflect, experiences and things that we learn why we're doing this. So wow, thank you. That's totally make a sense. One thing that I always try to put when I try to engage in difficult topic or subject that we have to teach the students is, like, how can that specific topic be meaningful for them? Always trying to use a framework. Wow, and through that, things start to be a little bit more easy to apply. Just a simple thing, right? We were having this project-based learning about peace and human rights. And it's very broad, right? Concept. What is peace, or what is a human right? So the way that I was able to structure is, okay, we live in the city of Costa Mesa. And then question of, what does it mean to become an active citizen? So through that, the student had to elaborate on a project where they needed to, throughout the 4 to 6 weeks, look into your neighborhood, try to realize your own problems that you think that is important to your neighborhood, and let's discuss, research, and try to propose some solutions. So we had students talking about speeding problem in my neighborhood, or stray cats problem in my apartment complex. Things that wow, that's so fantastic and really unique and important for the local context. And then through that, one activity that we did as a class, it was like, okay, it was in December, né? In the beginning of December, we have a last city council meeting happening in the city of Costa Mesa. What do you think, everybody, in going to the city council, and some of you go and speak in the podium, right? Because we have the public hearing time. One of the student, man, he raised his hand. I want to do it. And amazing, like, this person that was the first student to raise his hand. For the past 2 years, he was in a speech program because he couldn't speak properly, and really challenging in the reading or expressing his opinion. But he was the first one to raise his hand, and we both together created the speech, and then he delivered beautifully in the city council meeting. And that was like one of the field trip that we did. Some of the students went to the city council together. saw him, and then right even now we can watch in the YouTube. So it was this memorable moment where I tried not to translate into something more meaningful for their local context on their own life too. So yeah, totally agree with you, man.
Wow. Well, no, thank you so much for sharing that anecdote of what is clearly a tremendous win, not only for that individual, like that student, but even the whole class, because there was this, not only you and the student going there, but also other students who wanted
Yeah.
to support, and then having it be recorded, maybe
Mm,
the sense of pride of, let me share this like YouTube link with like other people,
yeah.
and it's just ripple effect after ripple effect.
Yeah.
And again, it resonates with everything that you've been sharing about really understanding that, well, one, we need to trust our students by
Mm,
listening deeply to them, and then creating this space, right, for them to apply from the questions, actual
sure.
like research, and then action. and and then I think that becomes golden memories for them as
Mm,
they continue in new pursuits, right, new projects, encounter new people, and ultimately grow into capable global
yeah.
citizens. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And this conversation has just been really wonderful for me as well, because I
Mm,
find the experience, each person's experiences are so rich, and I find the way that you've told your story, it just seemingly, it's just kind of building and building this tremendous kind of foundation, and that now you're really able to apply that in such a meaningful way at the
mm,
school that you're at. But it's still just the beginning.
yeah.
And I think in that
Exactly.
sense, there's this excitement of, wow, I'm going to continue to impact more and more students, but
Yeah.
I'm also, for myself, and then I would imagine you would agree, for you, still growing, still evolving, and still trying to make sense of not just the identity, but also the deeper mission of my efforts are leading towards a certain dream. So we're approaching the tail end of this conversation. I do have one more question that I wanted to ask you.
Mhm.
Do you have any book or movie recommendations for our listeners?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, first of all, thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you for inviting me. It was really this, as I mentioned, a moment to reflect about myself, about my journey, but also reflect on things that I've been doing right now as a career. So it was such a meaningful time. Yes. It's a recent movie that was released. It's actually an animation that I really like a lot. It is the Zootopia 1 and especially the 2. I really like the way that they put it because it's connected with immigration. It's connected with labeling certain group of people. It's connected with, most important thing for me, the friendship, and how can we try to create meaningful connections based on friendship, right? So Zootopia 1 and 2, amazing.
Thank you so much. I've seen Zootopia, the first one.
Mm,
I have yet to see the second one, so this is
yes,
a sign for me to watch it. So thank you so much,
please.
Felipe. I wanted to uh, give you the last word, and this could be like any final thought or final send off you'd like to share with the listeners. So anything at all that comes to mind.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I'm in this process of learning and learning and learning, and I will be keeping learning. I know that I'm still in the beginning of my educational career or educational practitioner career. And this is a commitment where I wanted to share where I will be always become an educator where I can inspire students and also become a person who can um, learn throughout experiences and knowing that identity or experiences, it's not a static thing that, as we were able to discuss, it evolves. So who knows who I'm gonna be in 10, 20, 50 years, maybe I will be defining myself as, okay, I'm everything. I'm from the world. And that's okay too. So if there's anything that I can help you, please, you more than happy to connect. My email is felipe.iwahashi, IWAHASHI @gmail.com. And thank you so much for this privilege.